coming today. I want to thank Steve Scheffler for putting all this together for us this afternoon. And Steve is from College Relations. He's the dean there. And his title, the longer title, is Higher and Further Post-Secondary Education Across the Pond. A look at community colleges equivalent in England from a marketing perspective. Steve?
Thank you very much. And I'm wearing my official Bedford College staff tag today. It's in honor of Bedford College. But if you wouldn't mind getting the lights on, that's okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about the origins of my sabbatical and how I kind of decided what my proposal would be, where I went. Very little bit of background on the UK education system, because that's very important to how community colleges are positioned over there. They're actually called further education colleges. Some translation, because even though we speak the same language, there are some things that we say different than they say, and vice versa. Some differences and commonalities between the community college and the FE colleges. A little bit on each college that I visited. Some takeaways and lessons learned, and I'll show you a little bit of some nice side trips, because whenever you go somewhere, you always want to show some fun things that you did. And the Rotary connection to this whole sabbatical, because it would not have been possible without Rotary. So, how did it come to be? About a year ago at this time is when I decided that I was ready to do something a little bit out of the norm. I was looking for something to energize me and give me some new ideas, some fresh ideas. So that's what happened in September of last year. And as I thought about where could I go to learn new things, I didn't want to go to San Jacinto College or HCC or someplace local. I wanted to go a little bit afar. And I thought about a place that speaks the same language, basically. And England was someplace I'd never been. And the more research I did about the further education colleges, it just seemed like a very neat thing to go explore and hopefully learn a lot, which I did. So I had the idea, and then really what made it possible was a chance encounter with Brian and Meg Pexton. And they were attending a Rotary Club meeting about this time last year. As the germ was kind of floating around, I heard them introduced at the Woodlands Rotary Club, and they were visiting their son, who lives in Shenandoah. And I went up to them after the meeting, and I just told them about my idea, and very nice, almost grandfatherly-like qualities, and we instantly connected, and I stayed in touch via email, and sure enough, after a few emails, he indicated that he may be able to help support with some housing through his Rotary Club. He belongs to a Rotary Club in the delightfully named Biggleswade, England. I'll show you where that is in a minute. So I did a lot of research. Once I realized, hey, this thing can actually happen, I started to research the further education colleges, did a lot of Googling, and then I started emailing some further education colleges in England and trying to find my counterparts at these colleges so that I could tell them what I was planning to do. And I did get some commitments. Bedford College was the first that committed, and they're very close to where Brian and Meg live, so that was the most convenient. But these other, College of Northwest London, which is in London, I'll tell you a little bit about all of these. Croydon College was kind of a throw-in toward the very end. I wasn't planning to go there, but the more I learned about it, I wanted to throw that in, and I did. So they committed, and then I got approval. I submitted my proposal, and Dr. Lane, after we talked about it, we agreed that instead of going for a fall or a spring sabbatical, it would probably be easier for our department for me to do this in the summer as opposed to a long semester. So it was a little bit more condensed than your typical sabbatical. And also just from a financial standpoint and a logistical standpoint, going to England for 3 months is not as easy as going there for, I was there for 6 weeks. And then I spent the spring semester basically planning and doing all the logistical things. I set up a bunch of our stuff in the big box a couple weeks before I left, and just arranged all the different transportation kinds of things we need to do. So just a little bit about where I was. This is the southeast, I don't know if this has a thing to it, but this is the southeast corner of the UK, London. It's interesting because it's positioned a lot like Houston is positioned. on the southeast coast of Texas. It has a channel that kind of runs in like our ship channel does. It has a big loop around it called the M25. It's a lot like Beltway 8. In fact, it's 123 miles around M25. It's about 88 miles around the Beltway. So that gives you a little bit of perspective. It's a little bit bigger than Houston. But I was staying, Brian and Meg lived up here in Biggleswade, which is right very close to Bedford. This is very close to what it's like with the Woodlands. It's about, by train, this is about 30 minutes on the fast train. So it's not that far. Driving, it's a lot longer, probably 2.5 hours. But traffic is incredible. But it felt a lot like, kind of like the Woodlands. In fact, that's my first day in England. And Brian and Meg live on 23, the Woodlands. That's the name of their street. So I felt right at home in England. But let me show you where I went. Bedford College obviously is in Bedford and very close to where I was staying. I was staying in the homes of Rotarians, and I'll show you a few pictures from Bedford. But that's Bedford College, and I spent 2 weeks at Bedford College. Oakland's College, a little bit closer into town. I rented a car and drove on the wrong side to get to Oakland's. And it's still kind of suburban, but it has a little bit more of a city feel to it. College of Northwest London, which is near Wembley, if you know Wembley Stadium. One of their buildings is right next to Wembley Stadium. And it has a little bit, much more of an urban feel to it. And then Croydon College, which is in South London. Very international, very ethnically diverse. So all four of the colleges have their unique demographics. So before I talk about the colleges themselves, it's really important for you to know, if you don't already, just the educational system in England. It's a little bit different. Pretty much until you get to 16, it's very similar. They have the lower and upper schools. But then when you turn 16, up until this year, that's your compulsory age for going to school, public school. And at 16, you have your choices. Students can stay in their school, it's like the ISD school, and they can stay there until they're 18 and then go off to the university or come to a further education college. Or they can move to what's called a sixth form. A sixth form is a specialized school where they're learning and they're studying for the testing that they take to get to the university. So it's just more of a specialized sixth form school. Or they can move to an FE college. That's where I was for the most part, in the FE schools. Or they can enter the workforce at 16. But what is really a concern in England is what they call NEETs. A NEET is someone who's not employed in education or training. So NEETs are a problem, and you can see 10% of the population from 16 to 18 are NEETs, and 15% when you raise that to 24. So there's an issue there that they're trying to reduce the number of NEETs in the UK. But what's really interesting is right here, this little gap right here between 16 and 18, you have your further education colleges competing against what essentially are the ISDs. They're competing for students. In fact, this Bedford College, they opened up their own sixth form. They manage it. It'd be like us opening a school for 16 to 18-year-olds. And we kind of do with dual credit and early college, but we're partnering with the ISDs when we do those things. They're competing against them. It's just a different dynamic. So here's the slide just about when you have to deal with translation. What we call a service area, the Lone Star College service area, kind of our ISDs and zip codes, they call a catchment area. Don't know why, it's just a word that they use. What we call faculty or professors, they call tutors or teachers. And I think this really is a reflection of how the further education colleges are positioned in the UK, because they're not considered officially part of higher education. Even though they can offer courses of transfer to the universities, they're not considered on the same level as universities, and they're not funded the same way as we are. So I think there's a disparity there. It's also, when you look at the word president, what we call president, they have principals. what we call a listing or a schedule of activities. They call it Rotary, R-O-T-A. What we call a catalog of classes or catalog of promoting our college, they call a prospectus. When we plan something, they scheme. It sounds funny. I mean, it sounds like they're up to no good. But that scheme is just something that they use, the word they use. When our students transfer, their students, they top up. It sounds like you have a phone and you're topping up your phone. That's the word that they use in their promotion. Top up at the university. Open house. We call it open house. They have open days, and they have lots of them. I mean, these further education colleges have 6 to 8 open days a year, and they get 300-400 students and parents coming to their open days. President, I already said that, president and principal. What we call 2 weeks, they call a fortnight. If you've ever watched Wimbledon, you know that Wimbledon is a fortnight of tennis because it's 2 weeks of tennis. And I did get to go to Wimbledon. What we call a program, like our Rad Tech program, they call a course. So, a course we kind of think of as an individual course or a class. That's the word for program. This is really weird. I don't know why they call it maths, but it's plural over there. So if you're in developmental math, it's developmental maths. Don't know why. What we call, when we get revenue and our overall budget based on our revenue, they call it turnover. And then here we have an associate's degree. They are just starting to, they've created what's called a foundation degree. Essentially the same thing, but it's not as universally well known as our associate's degrees are. Finally, what this indicates is, George Bernard Shaw said, the U.S. and England are 2 countries divided by a common language. We totally agree with that. These are just the education words. There are so many other phrases and words that they say that just don't register unless you are immersed in it. So some commonalities and differences between the community college and the further education college. One is the historical reputation. We all know that the community colleges have fought, and I think in some ways we've overcome the stigma that has existed about the community college not being as rigorous or as much quality. Their further education colleges are probably 20 years behind us, but they fight the reputation battle the same that we do against the universities. I already mentioned that they're not officially part of the higher education system, so that's a big difference, and that reflects other differences. We're both charged with being points of access for universities, but the difference is that the transfer focus, only 1/8 of British undergraduates attend in FE colleges, whereas here in the U.S., about 45 to 50% of all undergraduates are at a community college. So their pipeline is a lot smaller than ours is. Bachelor's degrees. This is kind of it's not a minor difference. In the U.S., some community colleges have begun to offer limited amounts of bachelor's degrees. And Florida is probably one of the leading states that has bachelor's degrees offered by community colleges. And they, in England, the further education colleges, they can offer a bachelor's degree at a further education college, but they don't get credit for it. It's not even in their name. It's what they call validation by the university. The universities validate the further education college's degree. So that's unique, and I would feel a little bit slighted if I was at a further education college, leading them all the way through a bachelor's degree. Even though their bachelor's degrees are 3 years and ours are 4 years, it's still kind of a weird thing. Turbo competition, I've already mentioned that a little bit. These colleges, these further education colleges have so many competitors. I mentioned that they compete with the ISDs or the local school systems. But this is just inside the M25. These are just FE colleges. You can see there's so many of them. I mean, they overlap their service areas. If you look at Houston, I mean, there's Houston Community College, and you have the outlying areas, but nothing like this. So they're competing not only against the ISDs, they're competing against trade schools, they're also competing against their neighbor further education colleges. So it's really unique. Comprehensive in scope. If you get a chance, I left out some materials on these tables. These further education colleges, one way in which we're similar is they offer the gamut of education that we do. They have education for youth. They have apprenticeships, which are a little bit different than here. They have English as a second language. A lot of students at some of the colleges I visited, that's a big program. They offer the transfer. They offer vocational. The one thing they didn't offer was like an academy for lifelong learning. It was just kind of for when I was talking about our program, they were like, they didn't even think about that being a market for them. The tuition and the financial aid structure, it's a little bit different over there, the way that the students pay for classes. Essentially, if they don't pay out of pocket, the government is the funder of their education. The students, it's kind of a graduated scale, but if you're 16 to 24, the government is going to pay for most of your education, and then you pay it back over time once you start earning a certain amount of money. And what else? We both struggle with funding. Now, our funding structures are different. Here we have three main funding sources. We have the state, which has dwindled in terms of the percentage that they fund of our college. We have local tax-paying district, and then we have our student tuition. Over there, it's essentially, if the student doesn't pay, they get funded by the government. So it's the national government. They went over a change about 20 years ago. There at the FE colleges, used to be funded by the local boroughs or the local shires. They had local funding, and then that went away about 20 years ago, and now it's all national funding. So they're very honed in on making sure that they have their, basically what we call contact hours with all of their students. That's kind of what I was just saying. The other thing that was really, I spent most of my time in the marketing offices of these colleges, and they are as diverse in what they do as the marketing offices here. Several of them, in fact, are responsible for their business training, and they have a big corporate college. All of the colleges I visited were involved in varying degrees in providing corporate training for the local employers, and also a big component of what they do is apprenticeships. So when the students are 16 to 18 to 24, in that age range, a lot of them are doing apprenticeships. So they come to school for 1 or 2 classes, and they go work for the local whatever company, and they eventually get a full-time job if they do a good job. But they also were involved with call centers. Some were, some weren't. It just varied as to what each marketing office was responsible for. Some had school outreach in their areas. Others partnered with their student services department to provide the materials for the outreach. Some had institutional effectiveness and research and data gathering. But one of the things, Bedford College specifically, they had a very robust data program. They weren't just looking at the demographics of their service area, the catchment area. They were looking at psychodemographics and really going into what the socioeconomic profile of all their different areas in the catchment area. Facilities. This is a big difference. Every college I visited, their facilities were just a lot older and more cramped, and most of them didn't have AC because typically they don't need AC. But while I was there was a heat wave. And at Bedford College, their marketing office was on the 5th floor of a building with the elevators were only used for disabled students. So everybody was trudging up and down the stairways, 5 sets of stairs every day. So I don't hear my team complain because we have a pretty good deal on the 1st floor of an air-conditioned building here in Houston. But there's a lot of retrofit, there's a lot of mergers, buildings that just are getting sold, colleges merging. You saw that map. I mean, it's just a kind of a hodgepodge of colleges, and they'll change names fairly frequently. Online learning is a big difference. It's really not done over there, at least not in the further education colleges. And I asked why, and they just said, we're behind, I guess. They didn't really have a good answer for why they're not doing the online learning. I know that some of the schools I visited, they were much more into the vocational and the apprenticeships for their students. So that's obviously a little bit more hands-on learning and less online. But even the ones that are doing the university transfer piece more than the others, they weren't doing it online. So here's Bedford College. This is the college I visited the longest. And they have about 16,000 students, about a $50 million budget. If you compare it to this college, we have about a $30 million budget. It's a mix of rural and city. And they have two campuses. They have a city campus in Bedford, which has about 60,000 students. It's bigger than Conroe. But then they have a rural campus called Shuttleworth. You can see their logo there. It says including Shuttleworth College. They bought Shuttleworth College about 2 years ago. And it's a 5,000 acre farmland. They do all sorts of things. Here it's they have a zookeeping, basically a zoo school to teach people how to go work in zoos. And they have neat things. This is the QR codes. Their students will go to various parts of this 5,000 acre place, and they'll hit the QR codes to get information about animals or the fishery. They had all sorts of things. I'll just tell one quick story about this. As they were giving me a tour of the Shuttleworth College, they were taking me to all the different animal cages, and they came to this one place where it was just a locked building, and they said, "Are you okay to go in here?" And I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" And they said, "Well, it's about 40 degrees in here." And I said, "Oh, that's fine. Houston, it's no big deal. 40 degrees isn't that cold." So, and they said it was the tortoise room. So I'm like, why would you have tortoises in 40-degree weather? It just seems like they shouldn't be here. But anyway, it was the Celsius Fahrenheit thing. So as soon as I got into the cage, I mean, it was like 40 degrees is about 100 degrees, and it was high humidity. And I said I felt right at home. But anyway, this is the sixth form. I told you that when you turn 16, you can go to sixth form, right? This is a specialized school to prepare them for university. They bought this building, Bedford College bought this building. They call it Hogwarts because it looks a lot, when you go inside, it looked like Hogwarts. It felt like you were in Hogwarts. But they branded it separate from their college. They don't use Bedford College in their name. But this has created a lot of animosity with the local school system because they're basically peeling off students from the ISD, essentially. But it was a really neat building. Had a lot of fun touring their college. So the notable programs, engineering, art and design, and then of course animal science. They had a very strong marketing office. They had about, I think, not 10 full-time employees. A very strong social media campaigns. And their office, like I was telling you, with the data and the analysis, they influenced their curriculum and their program decisions. They were working directly with essentially the deans. They don't call them deans. But working to say, we're not getting the enrollment here. Our market analysis is showing this and this. They were very involved in that decision-making process. I'm not going to show you the video, but you'll get a copy of the presentation. You can look. They had a really neat marketing video for Bedford College. And if you took off the name Bedford College, England, I mean, you would think it could be a U.S. community college. These are just some other pictures. They had a lot of neat signage on the roadways around the college. This is really old. This was built in 1930, and it feels like it when you're inside. But they make do. I mean, they just make do with what they have. They have open days, like I said, about 6 or 8 times a week or a year. They basically re-tag their vans. They have about 6 vans. And they are out in the community all the time, so they just update the next open day and they promote it. So
Is that like an open house?
It's like exactly like an open house. Yeah, in fact, I have some of the open house brochures that I think we can use for some ideas from there. But this is their team, and this is me on the last day there, and we were wearing our Maverick medallions. Theater, they don't have big theater. None of the colleges I went to had big theater. In fact, one of the colleges I visited, they dropped their theater program because of the enrollment. But they're all like the black box theaters, very small and contained. This is the mansion house. It's on the 5,000-acre farm. And this mansion house, it's kind of what they call a folly. It's not really, it wasn't built in the 1500s. It was built in like the late 1800s. So they call it a folly. I guess it's kind of like a fake historical building. But anyway, they have a restaurant there, a catering program. So they teach catering and restaurant management in that building. One thing that was really neat when I visited Bedford was they had a PR person who hung around me for one whole day while I was visiting. And they basically had me get on top of the tractor and in the horse barn at the mansion. And so I became a mini celebrity. My blog got a big uptick in hits once this article came out because they listed my blog in the article. And I'll show you the link to my blog at the end of the deal. This is Oakland's College. It was the second college I visited. Again, it had a lot of similarity with Bedford College. It was a mix of rural and city, very strong agricultural programs, just like the farm at Bedford. They have a big sports program. Here, this is their nice turf, artificial turf soccer field. They have a lot of their students come through their sports programs and go to all sorts of teams. They have animal grooming. But they have, good technology. They have overheads and whiteboards and computers. This is an example of like an English class that they would offer for transfer type students. And then this is just a picture of a monitor in their call center. And while I was there, I got a tour of their call center. It's one room. But it's essentially they have a great software system, and it really lets them manage the call center in a more sophisticated way that we're trying to move toward. And we're going to be getting some new software for our call center. But it really lets, like I said, each agent in the call center, it has their data, and it shows what the wait times are and that kind of thing. We're really going to be focusing on that in our area. So it was neat to see them involved. The other thing is their marketing offices were all very open. They'd be like in a room like this. There's not a lot of separation of offices, so a lot of open office environment. And Oakland's, they just kept all their data up on the screen. You can't really see this, but this is their social media. They have all their numbers up for social media, where they stand, and they have goals and targets. This is the number of students, the applications they need to reach their goal, based on the funnel system of enrollment management. So it was neat to see them working on this and have it all kind of out there in the open. They also have a big special needs program at Oakland's College. They work with young students who have various disabled issues. And they have this is where it's located in here, and they have rooms that are set up specifically for these kids to come in and learn specific skills that they can use to go out and be productive. But they had a very small but efficient marketing department. This is Croydon. Croydon College was in South London. This is the throw-in that I visited for a day, so I didn't get a lot of pictures here, but there are about 9,000 students. This college is very strong in transfer. They have about 1,500 what they call higher ed students, so they're training a lot of students to go to the local university. Trying to remember what the name of their university is. That was the other difference. Most of the FE colleges have a single university that their students will transfer to. They don't have broad articulation agreements with a lot of universities. So you'll see a FE college, and the students will go to like University of Bedfordshire if they're in Bedford, or whatever the local university is. So they have about 4,000 apprentices, and again, that's where the students come in, and they're immediately linked with an employer, and they're learning on the job as well as at the school. They have a job center, business training, ESL. They have a lot of outreach to the NEETs, because in South London there are a lot of unemployment and students needing help. 73% ethnic minority, a lot of Caribbean, Indian, and Asian. But they also have a very neat tie with UNICEF. They're the only rights-respecting college, the only one in the UK. They go to the Model UN, so they're involved highly with that. It's a very old college, about 125 years old, strong in the arts. I wish Debbie Ellington was here, because they have the neatest digital film production design, fashion design. They have a great graphic design program. This is a press. They have this is a working printing press. It was like 100 and something years old. They have like 3 of these, and they're teaching their students traditional graphic design, traditional layout, using the blocks and all that kind of stuff, printed blocks. But here it was just neat to see kind of what are their top 5 reasons. Well, they're very similar to ours. Why would you come here? The location, the broad variety of classes, the facilities, the instructors, they call them lecturers. So the reasons, and it's very similar to the community college. They had a nice library, very modern library, and they even use digital messaging like we do in our buildings. That was the only college I saw that did that. It was Croydon College. This is actually part of their arts area. They have these flexible rolling walls, and they have their students have almost their own areas to do their own design up on the walls. So it was really customized for the program. They do fashion design mixed in with art in the gallery. The other cool thing is they offer this is a working bar, so they teach bartending. I thought that was kind of cool. This was the last college I visited. It's College of Northwest London, 11,000 students. This college is probably struggling the most in terms of its enrollment. Very urban, very diverse population, a very old campus. This is the original campus here. They've sold off some of their buildings in other smaller areas. They've got a lot of flack for that because those local communities wanted to keep their little piece of the college there, but they just were seeing their enrollment decline. Their biggest programs were construction trades, automotive tech, beauty and massage, but very little transfer. It's almost all vocational. They have eliminated, like I said, the drama program. But the neat thing was they had a very strong business training. They're right next to Wembley. This is Wembley Stadium. So they have a lot of business around Wembley Stadium. And they're working with a lot of different businesses, and especially this. They're one of the 7 colleges that are helping to staff London's Crossrail project. If you've ever been to London, you know it's fairly easy to go north and south, but going east and west in London is a nightmare. So they're doing a Crossrail project, and they're supplying a lot of those apprenticeships and students to work in the Crossrail project. This was a part of their fashion design program, but it looked a little bit like a sweatshop, and it felt like a sweatshop because they don't have AC. They can open some of the windows, I guess, but this is where they do some of their training for selling. And this was kind of neat. All the colleges had very tight security. This was my Bedford College security tag, and every door pretty much on the campus that I had to go to, I had to use my tag. Here at College of Northwest London, it felt like a subway. You couldn't get through without showing, using your tag. The other thing I did not like about College of Northwest London was their color. It's a pinkish, nasty-looking color for me. And it also reminded me of Southwest Airlines. If you've ever seen the Southwest Airlines logo, the old Southwest Airlines logo, it looks like that. But they like to put it on their walls, and it was just kind of everywhere. This pink, purplish color. But anyway, they do a lot of what's this called? Solar paneling. really neat instructor that showed me what they're doing with that. They also have art design as part of the construction. They do tiling. Unfortunately, when I was there, the students were not there, but some of their work was still on the walls. But they train a lot of tiling folks. And then this was kind of neat. They have a very heavy Muslim population, and I guess this was, they didn't want after they're kneeling with their prayers, they didn't want the students in this particular restroom using foot washing in the restroom. But this just goes to show you how much diversity there is in that college, and specifically the Muslim population.
Did you ask them at all about, because I saw the average age was 35, that seems older
It seems-
than the other schools. Did they
it
say
was.
why they attract that older population?
I think it's just because a lot of the unemployment, and they're doing a lot of the vocational training, and they're just attracting men and women in their 30s who are looking to retool their career. They don't, like I said, that college did not offer a lot of transfer, so they don't have a lot of the 16 to 18-year-old market, so that skews the age upward. So how will my sabbatical benefit the college? And I want to leave time for questions, so I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker. Event planning. Bedford College did a really good job with planning their events. Yes?
I have a question. The budget for this one was 2 million with 11,000 students.
No. It was 2 million. They did 2 million annually in corporate training.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah,
thought
2 million pounds. So that'd be
Oh.
about almost $4 million dollars in corporate training. That was just that piece. Better organization in terms of event planning. They had really detailed spreadsheets on different events that they would put on, and I took some good ideas from that. Call center, like I've already mentioned, they reinforced the need for enhanced software, and for the marketing department to share our advertising plan with the call center so that they're aware of the things that are out there and can answer questions better. Social media. One of the neat things that Bedford College did was they had really tight guidelines for when their college is mentioned on any type of social media. They had a software program that was tracking any mentions the college was getting on social media, and so they had a really neat protocol for how and when to respond, who should respond. So we were looking at that for how we do our response on social media. Signage. I took a lot of pictures of signs. Not the most attractive thing to look at, but good signage is kind of doesn't have to stand out. It blends in. It's something that's important, and we're always looking at ways to improve our signage here on our campus. And then just marketing, better use of demographic and psychodemographic data for decision making. And finally, an appreciation for all that we do have here. We are so lucky. I was encouraging them, all of my counterparts, to come here and tour our campus and kind of exchange the favor. Hopefully they will, but I think they will be very impressed with what we have. And I think we should be always thankful for the resources that we do have. Finally, I just want to show a few pictures. I did take some side trips. I didn't do all work. It wasn't all work. But I did go to Cambridge, and it was fun to see the punting on the River Cannon. And then this is the King's Cathedral, built under King Henry VIII. It took about, 80 years to build that cathedral, but it was so impressive when you were inside. It was just mind-numbing. I was in there for about 2 hours just soaking it all in. I went to Nottingham, which is in the kind of the Midlands. It's about 2 hours north of where I was staying. This is the oldest inn in England, and it's built into the side of the castle. This is the remnants of the castle in Nottingham, and this inn it's really like a restaurant bar or pub, but it's built into the side of the castle. I was hoping I sent Mr. Craig, but this is the Nottingham the Nottingham fighters. I can't remember what the riflemen from Nottingham. I did not find Robin Hood. I looked all over the place for him, but I couldn't find him. This is as close as I came. I went to the Cotswolds, which is an area in kind of central England that's known for just the idyllic village life with thatched roofs, and this was a really neat pub that I went to. I didn't drink in that part. I just had a plowman's lunch. If you know what a plowman's lunch is, it's like a open ham sandwich with crisps and all that kind of good stuff. And what else? I went to London, of course, a few times. I do want to give away something real quick, so I'm going to ask a trivia question. Who can tell me what naval hero suffered from, what England naval hero suffered from seasickness all of his life?
Lord knows.
Yes. So would you like a Bedford College t-shirt, or would you like a hoodie?
Oh, I'll take the Bedford College t-shirt.
Okay, there you go. All right. Okay, I'll do one more at the end. But this is the Globe Theater, the new Globe Theater, and they have a plaque where the old Globe Theater was. This is Lord Nelson at Trafalgar Square. I thought this was really cool. I took about 20 pictures. This is the horse market in Camden, and they have, do you think this is a lot of horse statues? They have horse statues everywhere in this market. It was like a tunnel, and they had big horses. They had the exact same horse that we have at the front of our campus. So I took a picture of that. But Camden is really neat. It's like Austin. It's like the Drag or 6th Street in Austin. I was there when the royal baby was born, and the hotel I was staying at the very end was literally right across the street from, I believe it's St. Mary's Hospital. And these people were waiting for the royal birth, and they had media there, and I was taking pictures of the media. I was hoping the baby would be born while I was at the hotel, but I had to move along to the next place. So I didn't get to, I was still there in England, but I wasn't right across the street. I did go to Wimbledon. This was on a Saturday, and I took my wife and daughter came for part of the trip. So I got to sit, I didn't get to go to center court, but I went to, this is court 18. And that's strawberries and cream, which is a tradition at Wimbledon to eat strawberries and cream. I wrote my blog that I did not like that, their strawberries and cream. I mean, I had a great time at Wimbledon, but when I was expecting you'd go to a booth and then somebody would actually scoop the strawberries and then pour the cream. Instead, it was they took you through this little fast food restaurant, like a gas station store, and they had them all on a shelf. And I picked mine up, and it looked like it had been sitting there for like 3 or 4 hours. So that was very disappointing, my strawberries and cream. I did go to Edinburgh. I took an overnight bus to get to Edinburgh. It's about a 7 or 8 hour bus drive from London. But this is the castle at Edinburgh, and this is me at the British Open golf tournament. I was not wearing a UT shirt my entire time there. I know it was there and there, but I did wear it. See there, I wore something else. I did go to Paris for a few nights. This was amazing. This is the Arc de Triomphe. And I took a video of this. It was just incredible to see these cars coming in and out, and these motorcycles just weaving in and out. It was amazing. It looked like Frogger. This is Napoleon's tomb. This is a Sacré Coeur, which Gary Brown was to talk about. I think there's a couple of movies that have this in the movie. I did go to Munich for a couple nights, and this was in the center of Munich. This is a really old church. This is Dachau, which is about 30 minutes from Munich. A very emotional experience to go there and see the tragedy that was happening there. This is one of the most incredible churches I've ever been inside of. I'm struggling with the name, but it was built it's not that historic, it was built in the 1800s, but it's just like they call it a Baroque fantasy. I mean, it's just, you cannot look I don't know how people can sit in there and worship just because you're just overwhelmed by the decoration. And then this is the castle that Disney is modeled after. This is Neuschwanstein. And then finally, Bedfordshire. This is where I spent most of my time. I spent 2 weeks with several different families. This is my favorite picture I've ever taken in my life. I was on a walk to this little village, and it was just incredible. I had to take a picture as soon as I saw it. These cows were grazing, and the reflection of the bridge. It's an old bridge. I mean, goes back to the Middle Ages, and then they built over it. The existing bridge was built maybe 200 or 300 years ago, but this is really old right here, the undergirding. I went to a garden party, which is the name of the song, and experienced the biscuits and the tea. I'm not a big tea drinker. I played Skittles in the local pub with Brian. Just had a lot of fun doing that. And we went to an air show. This was part of the Rotary Club's connection. But it was neat to experience the local village atmosphere when I wasn't at the colleges. And then this is the, I just lost my place. The last slide was just the Rotary connection. You can see it there. These two pictures here. One of the things you do when you're in Rotary is you exchange flags when you go visit another club's meeting. So I gave them our flag, and then they gave me theirs. And I got to do some of the community service things that the Rotary Club was involved with. And I'm taking some of those ideas back to our Rotary Club. Let's see. And one more slide. One of the things I'm doing is I'm writing articles. I'm hopefully finishing in the article for Council, which is a magazine for the Council for Marketing and Public Relations, which is a branch of AACC. And I'm hoping that that'll get published in the January issue. The Rotarian, I've written an article for the District 5910 newsletter. And then finally, I did keep a blog, so if you have something to write down with, you can experience my trip and some of the things that I learned if you go to this WordPress site. And I probably about every other day, every third day, I do a post about either a college visit or something on a side trip. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and I'm really thankful that I'm at a place that would allow me to do something like this. And I hope to share more if you're interested.
Thank you.
I do have one more